it's Kazea.
A few months ago, I posted this video and I'm so grateful for the amount of love that it has received so far. Thank you so much for the encouraging comments, and for this video, I thought it would be a great idea to bring one of these prompts to life. As you guys saw based on the title, you guys probably already know which transformation we will be redesigning today, and it is none other than Sirenix. In case you guys don't know, Sirenix is the main transformation in Season 5. When I was creating the initial prompts for this, I really wanted to combine elements from both Harmonix and Sirenix, which explains why the final product is kind of a mixture of both. I really like the visual appeal of Harmonix, but I personally prefer the lore of Sirenix. Since majority of the plot takes place on water instead of land, I took heavy inspiration from oceanic elements such as aquatic plants and marine life. Another major source of inspiration for me when I was creating the designs is Iris van Herpen's work. A lot of her recent pieces contains this 3D structure that almost resembles a skeleton, and I thought it would be really cool to incorporate that into my Sirenix redesigns. My initial sketches only showed the fairy forms of the girls, but I always loved entertaining the idea of Sirenix granting the girls the ability to transform into mermaids. I know that the Winx's core brand is all about being fairies, but considering the majority of the story literally takes place underwater, it wouldn't be out of place to incorporate this in the plot. Especially since mermaids are canon in the Magic's universe. And I mean, if they were gonna have two transformations anyways, they might as well make it more exciting. And trust me, this would have blew my mind when I was 9. And clearly, I'm not the only one who holds the same sentiments. There are many references that reimagine Winx as mermaids. Which is why in this video, the girls will not only have one, but 2 transformations. For Sirenix, I feel like it is only right that we start with the Princess of Andros, Aisha. To be honest, designing her was kind of the most daunting for me because she is quite literally ocean royalty, so it's only right that I do her design justice. Her dress is heavily inspired by this piece from Iris van Herpen. It's a halter top with this seafoam inspired color palette. I'll put some reference pictures right here, but this is kind of what I was going for. My main inspiration is this dress in particular that Halle Bailey wore during the Little Mermaid press tour. It just looks so divine on her. I really wanted this dress to scream that if the ocean was a dress, this would be it. For the girls' designs, I incorporated these fishbone elements into their dresses. Side note, in the middle of rendering, I realized how disorienting it is to color on top of a messy sketch, so I finally stopped being lazy and cleaned up the line art. But back to the design, I added these gills and scales to kind of indicate that they were no longer just fairies, which is kind of what you get when you have Sirenix. To signify her royal status, I added this beautiful headdress right here, these long, flowy, elegant sleeves, and sparkly magical wings. Moving on to her mermaid form, I was really inspired by Manon and Halle Bailey. This sea monster look that Manon had during their Monster High campaign just looked so regal. The hair, the makeup, it's everything. Even in their mermaid form, I still wanted them to have cute little wings, and I'd say that the design is not that different from their fairy form. The cut of the top is relatively the same, and I still retained the main elements of her fairy form, such as the fishbone structure, the corals, and pearls, so it's not that much of a difference. Her hair is mainly inspired by Halle Bailey's locks in The Little Mermaid. The brunette with reddish undertones really mesh with Aisha's character, so of course I had to include it in the design. In terms of story, I personally believe that Aisha should have been the center of this season. Given that majority of her story happens in her home kingdom, it only made sense that she is the most affected by the events that unfolded. Which is why it still pisses me off to this day that apparently the final battle is between Bloom and Tritanus. Bloom is never beating the Mary Sue allegations, y'all. Just imagine how epic and emotional the fight could have been if it was between Aisha and Tritanus. At the end of the day, they're still technically family, so having them together in the final battle could have really added lots of layers, emotional depth, and complexity instead of a generic fight between a hero and a villain. But enough ranting, that's it for my design for Aisha. Up next is Flora. Maybe it's her feminine nature, but growing up, she has always been my favorite in the Winx. So naturally, I was super excited to design her. To really emphasize that she is the fairy of nature, I took lots of inspiration from aquatic plants and flowers, especially those that had a warm pink or green color palette. I refrained from using shapes with angular or sharp edges in favor of more roundish ones to communicate Flora's soft and delicate characteristics. I remember wanting her dress to be very flowy, almost like a flower. Initially, I wanted it to be green, but later on, I ended up changing it into pink, which is a good call in my opinion since it's kind of a callback to her original Magic Winx form. The gradient for her pink dress were supposed to be orange, but I quickly realized how it didn't fit Flora as a character at all, so I quickly changed it to green and I could not be happier with that decision. The green corals wrapped around her arms like vines and the leaf-like gills complements the look really well. And I made the wings as organic looking as possible. Not gonna lie, it kind of looks like a lettuce, but like a pretty lettuce, so I'm not mad at it. Once her fairy version is done, I immediately moved on to the mermaid form. To be honest, I feel like Flora's is kind of the easiest one so far. Once I have the color palette down, it's really easy for me to kind of just go with the flow and let my pen do all the work for me. So drawing her is definitely the most enjoyable for me. I especially like how the gradient on her fins is a bit different from her wings. Instead of going from pink to green, it's green to pink, which matches the respective forms pretty well. Her mermaid form stayed relatively the same with a few minor changes such as her pearl headband, some puffy sleeves, and loose wavy hair. I especially love the gradient from her bodice to her tail. Pink and green just goes really well together. And with that, she is complete. Last but not least, we have the fairy of music, Musa. In contrast to Flora's round shape language, Musa's is very sharp and triangular. Her top is actually inspired by this look from Bella Hadid, but instead of gold, it's made out of coral. I really wanted the main statement pieces for her design to be her coral top and this fishbone belt, so I kept her skirt pretty simple. It's just a sleek, asymmetrical, flowy fabric with a duochrome effect like the other girls. After laying the flat colors, I started rendering. Her color palette was originally a lot darker and more monochrome, but then I realized that I prefer the red and cherry pink combo than the brownish red, so I changed it to suit her jet black hair better. At this point, she looked a little too pink. Now, I love pink, but I feel like if everything is just same hue and shade, then everything just kind of blends together in one mush. This is when I look back to her OG Magic's form where I realized that she needed an accent color. I figured there's nothing wrong if I gave the pink and blue OG combo a try, and what do you know, it was exactly what this design needed. The blue immediately made her pink statement pieces stand out, and to tie it all together, I added a few finishing touches, like changing her fins from this to that, adding these flowy ribbons on her arms, and matching the color of her scales with her blue gills. Moving on to her mermaid form, I really wanted to give her a dynamic pose that represents her gracefulness as a dancer and singer. Unfortunately, choosing this pose meant I had to sacrifice the front view of her design, but I think it's worth it. As a reference to her powers, I gave her these belly chains with musical notes on them. On her final form, I also added more pearls on her hair and accessories, which is the perfect complement for her sleek and elegant look. And that concludes today's video. A quick little trivia in case you guys haven't noticed, the shape of their wings is actually the same as their fins, which I think would be a really cool detail to highlight during their transformation sequences. Let me know what other ideas you have for the other girls, and I'll see you in my next one. Remember to give a like and subscribe, it really means a lot. Bye!